to 2024. Welcome back to the Crossway Youth Podcast. Whether you're on YouTube or you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it's good to be with you. Lockie, we're back for 2024.
Another big year. Let's
Woohoo.
go.
Season 2. And we thought we'd launch our year by just putting ourselves way out of our depth and getting just absolute royalty in the room.
Who's the biggest guest you can think of?
Please.
Well, it might be the two people that are sitting next to us right now.
Crazy.
I don't think so.
Guys, we've got our senior pastors in the room. So Lockie and I have prayed so hard before we came in. We wanted to be extra spiritual today because we've got Dale and Edi over to our left here.
There you go.
Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on the Crossway Youth Podcast today.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure. I've watched this podcast. It's very impressive. So I'm honoured to be on it, really.
Wow. Goodness me. That's a tick of approval for last year, right?
My
That's
stress
pretty
level's
good.
gone a bit higher.
Not a bit.
A number of your children have been on this podcast because we get the pleasure of being able to work with them as well. You guys have just come back from spending some time on holidays, as we all have as well. We're kind of getting into the school year around the time that this is releasing, school starting as well.
Yep.
Did you have a nice Christmas and New Year break, both of you?
Yeah, we did.
Lovely.
We had a fun Christmas, and then we went away just to Warrnambool in Victoria. And I was just saying we went to see the 3.5 Apostles and the new London Bridge, all of which are interesting, but good tourist attractions.
Well, we both rested and recreated because they're totally different concepts that people can mix up. Because I can rest lying on the couch watching the cricket, and but I don't recreate like that. And so you tend to have to put out energy to recreate. And so things for me like building a gate, taking a bunch of stuff to the tip, exercising, stuff like that. A lot of that was recreating me on the inside. So it's been an excellent break.
Were you still getting in your 10,000 steps a day over the holidays, or you took a break from the walking?
No, it's not quite. So what I didn't make a big noise about, I tore the cartilage in my knee. Cartilage? No, meniscus. The meniscus.
Oh, no.
Middle of the year, which has made walking very painful.
Yeah.
And but no, I've been pushing close to that. But we bought a rower as well, so I've been rowing each day because that's just a bit easier on the knee.
Yeah.
And but it's just doing the slow repair. Doctor reckons probably about 12 months till that pain goes away. Gotta love that, don't you?
Goodness me. Okay, you might be running rather than walking at the end of that 12 months, so ready to get back at it. Goodness me. Now, we're going to talk a little bit today just about the year 2024, what you're excited for, hear a little bit about some of your reflections of those of us who are listening are kind of like top-end high school, just starting uni, all that sort of stuff, your reflections on kind of that own season for you and what your hope might be for... We're both Gen Z, but kind of Gen Z, Gen Y, people who are listening to this, all that sort of stuff. But we want to clarify something just at the outset. I'm going to throw your mind back to the Christmas services. And Christmas services, you're famous, Dale, for inviting all the kids to come up on the stage with you and sort of ask, what did you get for Christmas, all that sort of stuff.
The Squishmallow.
The Squishmallow.
The Squishmallow. Like I learned whatever the going toy is that year. So this year is definitely the Squishmallow. And what was the other one? The two things are very similar here, but it's so funny because trying to figure out what the kids are describing, what do you do with it, and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit of a comedy space.
It's the most nerve-wracking segment for me. I just sit there and think, "Oh my word, what's going to say now?"
One of my favourite responses, I said to one young lad, I can't remember what his name was, but I said, "Yeah, have you been a good boy this year?" And he goes, "Who would know?" And I'm like, yo, you're awesome. That's the most honest answer.
Yeah. His parents are going, we're good parents in the background, wherever they are.
It's very funny.
Do you know what a Squishmallow is now?
I
Have you been
do.
informed?
I do.
Okay.
It's like a really squishy little kind of pillowy thing. It's like a little kind of triangle or a square pillow. It's got like a little printed thing on the front, ultra soft. It's like a Squishmallow, squishy pillow type.
Like a
thing.
pillow with a face, basically,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
and little arms and legs.
And a bit of shape around it.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, okay,
you hug
good.
it, basically.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yes.
That's not going to be on your...
Edie's my Squishmallow.
No.
I was going to say, you don't have one on your Christmas list for this year.
But it was amazing to find out how many kids there had them already.
Yeah.
They brought them on stage.
No, they had them already.
Oh, really?
It's
Well, as soon as a couple of people mentioned it, I turned around just at one service and I looked at this kind of crowd of how many kids are up there. Who's got a Squishmallow? I'm like, how many kids put up their hand? I'm like, they've done some good marketing, but I'm clearly not their target.
Clearly. That was very funny.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah.
How did that, do you remember when that Christmas thing, like, did you just decide one Christmas morning, you know what, we're just going to get, like, when you started at Crossway, like, how did that become a thing?
I have no idea. I don't remember. I don't have a good memory for that sort of thing.
I think it was because it was just the one service and they wanted a kids component. So they just decided to invite the kids down, and if they brought the toys, I think that's how it started, and then it just became a thing.
I'm not sure if I remember one year we were a bit short in staff, staff were, you know, our staff worked so hard in the lead up to Christmas, end of year stuff, lead up, and whatever day of the week it was. And I remember kind of the noise we put out to the staff was, I can take care of Christmas Day service. It was the kind of like the final thing. So I was the host, I did the kids talk, and I did the message. Like I did it. I'm not sure if that was when it started or not though, but anyway.
It's now, honestly, speaking as a Crossway staff member, but also a Crossway congregant, it is like essential viewing now for Christmas Day. We've recently become part of a campus plant at Crossway, so we attend on Sundays out in the Ringwood area. But the conversation that we had with our family was, I know we just went to church yesterday, but we have to get to church today because Dale's going to ask kids about Squishmallows. So don't you dare ever stop doing it, from Crossway congregants to the senior pastor.
There's nothing like a 6 or a 7-year-old telling you about Christmas.
Oh, it's very funny.
Oh,
That's good.
That's so good. Well, hey, I guess wanted to start a little bit. There are those of us who are listening who will kind of see you guys having done years and years and years in ministry in different church environments, faithfully serving the Lord. And there might be some of us who are wondering, like, well, that's a few years down the track. I'm right at the start of that. I don't know if that's for me potentially as well. There'll be some of us who are going, is ministry for me? Is ministry not for me? All that sort of stuff. Can you, I wonder if you can, throw us kind of back to maybe like your first ministry appointment, or we know that you guys traveled when you first got married as well and doing kind of God's ministry as well. What do you remember about that like early stage discernment process, like of like, what am I giving my life to here? Did you know that in that moment that it was like, this is the rest of my life here and we know that together as a couple, or have you got any reflections on kind of what that early process was like for you?
One of the first jobs in church world that I did was working at a Bible college in England. So I was on staff there for 5 years. And I trained as a dietitian, but the NHS were cutting down on the people they were employing. So I couldn't get a job because I had no experience. So I decided to go to Bible college and work there. So I worked there. And I think I realized at that point I was making a difference in people's lives. Yes, dietetics was great and I loved it and it was a growing, developing field. But really, to be able to impact someone's eternal life, you really can't beat that. So I think that was probably at the point that I thought, yeah, this is going to be what I want to do.
And you think at that moment you felt this is it forever?
Yep, I did.
Wow.
I did.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it would look like. No idea what it would look like. But yeah, some kind of ministry I wanted to be involved in.
For me, it actually goes back to, cause I was an aggressive anti-Christian atheist, and I went on, and there's a whole story behind that, but I ended up going on this quest and both discovering Jesus and being found by Jesus, and right at the back edge of that, where I'd become convinced there actually was a God. And I'd become convinced that Jesus was who he said he was. And I'd actually begun to pray and talk to God. But I knew I'd never put my trust in Jesus. I understood the gospel. I'd never repented of my sins. I'd never put my faith in Jesus. It was my own life. I was doing it my own way. And but as I kind of, this whole thing was getting wrestled to the ground, I remember saying to God one day, if I'm going to cross this line, it's going to be everything.
Wow.
You'll be my work. I was already a public speaker, and I already had leadership capacities. My dad had been a stand-up comic. I'd been a storyteller since I was young, all those sorts of things. And I thought, if I'm going to cross this line, like I'm not even 19 yet. This is me as an 18-year-old. Wow. And I'm saying, God, if I'm going to cross this line, it's going to be everything. You'll be my work, my play, my life, my all in all. If I'm crossing the line, I'm in. And I felt like God spoke to me at that point and said, this is the call on your life. This is what I want you to do with your life. And it was sufficiently clear that when I put my trust in Jesus, I felt called to Christian ministry. I didn't actually know what that meant, what it was going to look like. 6 months later, I picked up my backpack and ended up going overseas for almost 4 years. And Eddie and I met and married at that Bible college, and then went and worked in Israel. And so I had this big engine and quite a profound sense of call. This is what I'm doing with my life. And we just kept faithfully stepping that out. And God himself was the one repeatedly, every opportunity I've had, I've been invited to do it. So we were invited to Israel. I was invited to be a dean of students at a Bible college. I was invited to be the youth pastor at New Hope with Blackburn North Baptist, which is where I put my trust in Jesus, because I went to Blackburn High.
Wow.
And there's this 6-year gap, and all of a sudden I'm back there as the youth pastor. I was invited down to the Mornington Peninsula, led a church down there for 12 years, now called New Peninsula. And then I was invited to Crossway. So God has just repeatedly been the one who's opened the door. And we've just kind of stepped into that frequently with a prophetic word around it, certainly strong personal convictions around it. This is what God wants us to do. And quite a big engine, if that's the right way to describe it. I've always had a pretty big engine. I've always wanted to make a difference. And I know everyone's wired up differently, but I was wired up that, I've got a life. I'm going to make a difference with this life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love both of those reflections. I think it's super interesting for those of us that are listening. Like, you look at any of the research around like future career mapping and workforce mapping and things like that, and people are saying that kind of Gen Z are going to have something like 9 careers over their working life, and something like 30 to 40 jobs. Which the contrast of that to like a life of like, this is my life, like ministry, service of God's people is my life. I think that paints a really interesting contrast. You don't have to look far at the stats of like the amount of like pastoral appointments that are changing really quickly and all that sort of stuff as well. And so I love your story because it is a faithful service to God, and kind of knowing even from a young age, this is it for us. This is it for me. To a kind of generation that are going to have so much change and so much flexibility in the way they work and what they give their life to, and chopping and changing and all that sort of stuff.
And I think, I wasn't sure what I was going to do at that point, but I knew the most important thing was to follow Jesus. So, he might guide me to different things, and that was okay. And the other thing was, who would I do it with? So I remember going up to Scotland from the Bible College in England and saying, Lord, I just want to know if you want me to get married. If you don't, that's fine. I'm cool about that. But if you do, just let me know, because I can spend a lot of emotional time and energy on this, and I don't really want to. And I remember God saying very clearly, I circled it in my Bible, that there will be a leader. You will go to a country you don't know, and you will call the people you don't know. So he gave me that. So I didn't know who it was.
That's who you're going to marry. It was all about who
I was going to marry. Yeah, I didn't know who it was at that point, and I didn't know where it was. But God told me very clearly, this is what's going to happen. So if you can find that person that you can run with, that is the most important thing in your life. Because if you marry, the wrong person, then it will totally deviate where you're meant to go with God. So, give him your all.
Wow.
Don't mess around with him.
Yeah, don't mess around with God.
Don't mess around with God.
That's the screen grab right there. Hey, this is going to come out right around the time that we have like our Vision Weekend. Vision Weekend kind of here at Crossway, we kind of have a theme for the year, and Dale, you'll have an opportunity to preach to that to all the campuses as well. You got a couple of questions about that? Yeah.
Knowing that we're, maybe spoiler alert, but we're kind of matching up at least our Crossway Youth theme pretty closely with the weekend theme, wanting to get in. But just a question around how you guys come up with the idea of a year theme. Like, where does that come from? What's your focus when coming up with a theme for the church for the year?
Yeah, we tend to work on it in term 4, and so it's not like Moses going up on a mountain to meet with God, and I come down.
You get
to
some tablets
make
from the top of Mount Dandenong or something.
This is the theme for next year. There's a whole team of us who are communicators. So it's mostly the preaching team. Fiona Hall, who's our director of ministries, Tim and Edie from the BDC stream, And we all sit around, and our primary...
But even before you get to that, the most important thing is we're told to come having prayed about it,
True.
having sought God about it. So we come to that meeting prayed up, having sought God. What's your suggestion for the year? And I came with a list of things this year, and they were all very similar to fixing your eyes, keeping your eyes, something like that. And Heather came with a very similar list.
Yeah, that's right.
And someone else. So it just seemed like, God had led a few different people, and this is what it was. So
At that same meeting, we're talking about some of our major preaching themes for the year. And we've done it multiple years now, and it's not uncommon where we start actually with the preaching themes and say, what's God saying to us? Where are some of the spaces we need to lean into? We want the church to have a good balanced diet of all different genre of scripture. We don't just want to repeatedly be going to our favourite kind of text. So we look over a multi-year, what have we already been doing for multiple years? Okay, where do we think God wants us to speak? What are some hot issues, etc.? And so that we frame up the year. And it's not been uncommon where we've done that first, and then some of our theme for the year actually comes out of that. Namely, what's God saying to us? Where's He heading us? And that will frame it up. I actually think last year, if my memory serves me correctly, I think we actually began much earlier with that theme, and then as in what's the theme for the year? What's God saying to us? And then we took some of our preaching space out of that, but it was still with that broader multi-year grid. And we want to preach on some books, on some characters. We want to deal with real life issues and all those sorts of things. So it's a team effort, and we would spend a few hours on it at that one meeting, but that tends to just create some ideas. Built in Lego, you can always tear it apart and build something else. And we let it brew for a while, and we bang it around, we kick it around. I take it up to the executive team as well, and then ultimately, when all is said and done, that's when it comes back to me to make the call. I'm the senior pastor, make the call, but that's the backdrop to actually before we make the call.
That's cool. I know you might kind of mention a little bit of about the prayer and coming up with some things and the way that you match it to preaching and whatnot. But in terms of this year's theme, fixing our eyes. Apologies.
Yeah,
I should know that. It happened this morning. Fixing our eyes. Where has that come from, and what's that? How does that lead into like the vision for this year for the church? Matching it with preaching. What's the not the goal, but what's the goal behind that? What's the heart behind that?
The primary text for that is from Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, where it speaks about fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. But also in Corinthians, there's another text where it says, we don't fix our eyes on that which is seen, but on that which is unseen. And so, and again, it depends on which version you're using, whether you get the word fix there or focus your eyes, etc. But it's carrying a very similar theme. And so that's Hebrews 12:2 is probably kind of the core text. I think it's the NIV that uses the turn of phrase, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Let's run the race set before us, etc. And so that was our core text, and we will. I always open the year with 4 weekends around our annual theme.
And I think it was just a real clarifying thing. This year we want to fix our eyes on Jesus and see where He guides us, see what happens. But it was just like a clarifying vision of that's what we want it to be this year, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What, for both of you, again, like if you were to think fixing our eyes and think of a Crossway congregant, there's all sorts of demographics, right? Young families, empty nesters, young adults, young people, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
What do you hope the average congregant of Crossway feels from fixing our eyes? Like, what would you hope would be some like action steps that people would take, or how do you hope that would land with people, kind of different life stages, all that sort of stuff?
People's attention is caught by so many things, and so when the turn of phrase "fixing our eyes," not that their eyes are broken, it's actually about focus and choosing to gaze and continue to gaze. Now, our attention is caught by so many things. And people will gaze and want to gaze at a lot of stuff. And our lives are shaped by that which holds our gaze. And so this idea that as you fix your gaze on Jesus and you choose to continue to gaze at Him, that concept He will begin to shape your life. And so it's the one thing I want the congregation to learn how to do is to fix their gaze on Jesus and to continue to look at him, allow him to captivate you, allow him to capture your attention, see his depth, see his beauty, see his transcendence, allow Jesus afresh to capture your heart. And because when we take a long gaze, and when our gaze is fixed, caught, captured by Jesus, well, that will do the most wonderful things, not only in the individual's heart and life, in their relationships, in their work, in their personal spirituality, their holiness and all that sort of stuff, but it'll do something absolutely wonderful for us collectively. Like this church called Crossway, which carries a wonderful story, a wonderful multi-decade story, and it does something wonderful in the collective as well.
And I think the joy of that is it doesn't matter what stage of life you're at. We all have the capacity and the mandate required of us to fix our eyes on Jesus. So he will meet us in youth. He will meet us in young adults. He will meet us in our marriage stress. He will meet us in retirement. And he wants to, and he has something to say to us. So, but we have a part to play in that too, in committing to fix our eyes on Jesus.
Yeah, there's an action required on our part there as well.
Absolutely.
You were starting to get to like the distracted nature of the world that we live in, right? Our attention is drawn in so many different ways. People have referred to it as like attention economy, right? Like there's whole like profitable industries built around where your eyes are.
Capture you for 15 seconds.
Literally. And that's our generation, is Instagram, TikTok generation, all that sort of stuff as well. I mean, apart from like the obvious things that were different from when you guys were young adults, social media, all that sort of stuff as well. What challenges do you think those in Gen Z in 2024 face today that you would reflect was different to the challenges that you were facing when you were coming of age, when you were starting your career, all that sort of stuff?
So we're going backwards 4 decades.
Context, everybody.
4 decades.
Right.
I just turned 60.
I don't believe that.
I just turned 60. So we're going back four decades. So early 80s.
The early 80s.
We're now talking. And it's funny, you think back to then. Okay, that is, I remember doing year 11 and year 12, and computers were just getting introduced at school.
Wow.
And you had a pencil and you could shade in little boxes and put it through a scanner card in an attempt to like program something.
Oh my word.
And so that's how far back we're going. I can remember when like I got my first laptop computer when I was like 25, like this new thing, a laptop, a computer you can walk around with. Because we're talking, at this stage, you're talking pre-mobile phones. And pre-Apple. Pre-internet. Okay, how old are we?
When no one was still
on the Crossway Youth Podcast, young at heart.
That's actually where we're going back to. But having said that, there are certain human drives that are immemorial. And so as a young person seeking significance, meaning, a young person discovering boundaries, like where to because I had quite a boundaryless youth. My folks divorced before I turned 10, and bless her heart, my single mum, who was working really long hours, I was an undersupervised young person, which gave me really, I was the one who had to try and find where the boundaries were. And so while on the one hand, that created that was formational in me getting structured up. It wasn't all bad, but there was more than enough brokenness associated with that. But if I take my mind back into that zone, that was some of the birthplace of big drive. So in fact, it might have been as a 15-year-old, I remember saying to a mate, I wasn't a Christian, I feel like my life is set apart to make a difference in Australia.
Wow.
It's a big statement for a teenager to make. But I felt it. But simultaneously, by 16, I'm writing poetry on the purposelessness of life. And I'd already graduated. I graduated from high school in the US as a 16-year-old. And I did a year over there. And I'd pursued a lot of things, and I'd set records in sport, and I did fine academically. I got accepted to a science degree at Melbourne Uni, and didn't have any problem with girlfriends and stuff like that. Well, when I say didn't have a problem, I didn't have a problem getting a girlfriend. I created plenty of problems. But I had a void in my heart. So I was a high achieving, starting to do public speaking. So I was a high achiever, but I was broken on the inside. There was a void. And I was in pursuit of meaning, which is what led me to Jesus. And I was trying to figure out, like, honestly, there's got to be more to it than this. I could already kind of see it, you know. Honestly, is this it? Am I going to study? I'm going to work. I'm going to get married. I'm going to get kids. I'm going to get old. I'm going to die. Like, is that it? There's got to be a bigger grid and a better grid than this. And it was completely unsatisfying for me living a fairly boundaryless life. And I got drunk a lot through my teenage years. And that to have this liberty as a teenager that I could stay until the wee hours of the morning. Mum would be asleep when I got home. If I got home at 2, if I got home at 3, Mum was asleep. I had this boundaryless space. And you do destructive stuff in that space. You do destructive stuff to yourself, you do destructive stuff to others, as I was attempting to discover, who am I? And so that conceptually has never changed, whether that's 40 years ago or whether that's today. Some of the stuff that wasn't so much on the agenda back then is gender wasn't so much up for grabs. You know, people weren't questioning their gender.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm a boy. You're a girl. It's it was
pretty binary.
It was binary. It was to do with your genetics and all that sort of stuff. That level of self-doubt, I have a concern of the psychological impact on the generation coming through. That something so foundational is completely up for grabs. Already when I was young, divorce was just starting to really kick in, but my folks were really early adopters at that. Like when I was doing year 12 at Blackburn High, 120 people doing year 12, there would have only been maybe 8 students who had divorced parents.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was still rare, but it was just about to kind of really kick in. Some law stuff changed that brought that in. But so family structures, stability and stuff like that, they were starting to move. The sexual ethics were starting to move. That was already going, but that tended to be between men and women. It's not that homosexuality wasn't present. It was a lot more frowned upon, societally frowned upon. But the questions of who am I and all that sort of stuff and what am I going to do with my life, they were all very real.
Yeah, and they seem to be, like, as you say, they're enduring. That's what people ask throughout generations as well, particularly at the sort of life stage where you're leaving school and you're trying to make something of your life. You want it to be significant. You want it to be meaningful. You have hopes and dreams and potential in your life, and you want your life to feel meaningful and significant. And there's so many different ways that your attention can be drawn. So many different directions that you can be tugged as well.
Our relationships were relationships person to person, though. There was no social media. So some of my high school friends are still my friends. I still catch up with people I did year 12
awesome.
with. And so it was real personal, because it's almost hard for the younger ones coming through to even imagine that. There was no social media. It did not exist. It was all person to person. You'd go out as a group. The closest parallel would be on the phone. And I hated talking on the phone. When Edie and I were dating at one point, and she went back to see her folks in Scotland, and I was still in the north of England. And like we were engaged at this point, and Edie would call me and look forward to the phone call. I had nothing to say on the telephone. I was not a telephone conversation at all. And like I was hopeless at it.
You were.
Because it wasn't person to person. It just didn't work. But so
it's interesting, even though social media wasn't a thing, there's always ways to waste time.
Sure.
And I think that's interesting. So I could waste a lot of time doing whatever, whether it was with friends or, there's always stuff that can distract you.
TV was a good distraction.
is a good distraction.
It is a good distraction. Yeah,
Netflix
it is.
is hard to turn off sometimes.
Yeah, totally. But I think, no matter what time frame it is, there's always something that can take your time. And now it tends to be social media and whatever, but we always have the capacity to choose how we spend our time. We've always had 24 hours in a day. We've always been responsible, but how we choose to use it is up to us. And that's that self-leadership, self-management thing.
100%. It's interesting. I've been reflecting on
challenge.
that a little bit recently, and people think that somehow like the Christian worldview is restrictive, right? Like you're told what to do, you're told all these different things to build into your life, these habits, these routines, and sometimes people get to our age bracket and they want to shake those chains loose and break free and then go and live their lives and spread their wings. But the whole concept of like you're always being discipled by something, right?
Exactly
like you shake free from these chains and then you go and put some other chains on that you think you're running away from, but you're actually just deciding to worship something else.
Absolutely.
So it's that concept of like
it is.
You're always going to be discipled by something in your life. Better make it the right thing, right? Like you have choice, you have autonomy, you have decision making. I guess kind of one more thing on that as well, and we've talked a bit about this as well. If there was like one or two things that you were like, if 18 to 25-year-olds can just wrestle this down as they're going through this life stage, like if they can just like nut this one thing out, like just remember this or just sort this out or just focus on this, because it's going to just spur you on to follow Jesus. It's going to root your faith so deeply through your work changing, your relationships changing. Just get over this hurdle. Are there things that jump to mind as like really key things that you see as like significant for young people going through this season?
I think understanding, I remember I used to do a little talk about a car manufacturer. How many of us ever take the manual out of the glove box and look at it? Like we don't. Same with instructions for anything. We fiddle around trying to make it work. And then, we've got a manual. I could read that.
I throw it straight in the bin normally. Go to YouTube.
It's true,
but if
though.
you put diesel in a petrol car, it's not going to go very well.
Look at the manual.
But I remember realizing at one point, if God actually is the maker of me, he probably knows how best to get life in all its fullness out of me. And he gave me a manual. So I could throw it in the bin and do my best and put diesel in, or I could actually get to know him and discover life in all its fullness, no matter what age I am. He's age appropriate. He's not a killjoy. He's designed fun. He's designed sex. He's designed all of that stuff for us to enjoy life. He's not. Sometimes our concept of God is, with the bat in his hand, the divine killjoy, divine judge. It's not at all what he's like.
100 miles from that.
So to discover the joy of knowing God and the fullness of knowing God, and that he actually wants the best for you, and you will enjoy life more doing it his way than you would any other way. I think if people nailed that one, hey,
it'd solve a lot of other problems.
It's solving a lot of other problems.
I'd say to young people, if they can discover their identity in Jesus, that there actually is a God there who does know them and love them and who really does care for them. Discover that bit, and then live for him, live for that audience. It's funny, we want a lot of people to approve us. We want our social media likes. We want people to like us. And now at the ripe old age of 60, it matters so much less to me. And in fact, I've had to learn to die to that. It's become my prayer, and I've said it from the platform before I stand up and speak. I say, God, here I die. Here I die, but here you live. That I cannot afford to attempt to please people. It just doesn't work. And like you're on a hiding to nothing, even attempting to do that. But for a lot of younger folk, that ball is so much up in the air for a very long time because we want to be liked. It's really important to be liked. And not only do I need to be liked, I need people to like what I post, my photograph, my thought, and all that sort of stuff. How many likes can I get? And that's, you really can hang your life out there. But if you can discover your identity in Jesus, okay, who do I belong to? Whose am I? He made me, he knows me, he loves me. Okay, I am now valuable, irrespective of what any other soul on all of planet Earth thinks. I'm known, I'm loved, and my life matters. And let God be found true, and let all of humanity be made liars. I will align myself to him. Now, amazingly, when we do align ourselves with him, we become a person of influence. That it's almost a surprise, because you get people. So now in my role, if I don't want to be criticised, do nothing, say nothing, be mediocre. In fact, you won't get criticised if you achieve not much.
Yeah.
But if you start to make a difference, if you be a person of conviction and choose to live from a point of conviction, and even getting language around conviction, okay, you are signing up for opposition. You're signing up for challenge. But that's actually where life is.
Even just hearing you both reflect on that, like what you've come to understand success looks and feels like as well.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're in your 20s, the grid for success, as you're talking about, is like, I want my life to be meaningful. And what that means is, well, I want to advance professionally. I want a promotion next year. If I'm in one life stage, I've got to rush to the next life stage. If I'm not dating, I've got to start dating. If I'm dating, I've got to get married. If I'm married, I've got to have kids, or we've got to buy a house.
Totally.
And it's just
enjoying today.
Yeah, literally.
Totally.
It's exactly right. It's an inability, I think, and I speak personally here on behalf, like, we're both in that life stage as well. Like, it's hard to, like, and you're on the other side of that life stage going, like, success is just different, and it's it's abiding in your relationship with Jesus as well. And there's success looks and feels very differently to what it looks and feels like in your 20s as well.
It does,
The first 3 years of our married life, we did voluntary and semi-voluntary work. We married with $2,000 collective wealth, of which my contribution was only about $500. But we didn't own a car, we didn't have a house, we didn't have furniture, we had nothing. So first when we moved from New South Wales to Melbourne, when I first became a pastor, we'd been married for 3 years, we did our move in our HT Kingswood and a minibus. That was our global possessions.
That was our furniture as well.
After 3 years of marriage, everything could be carried in a minibus.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
And we already had one child by that stage.
Yeah, Amy was there.
That's crazy.
And so, like, we furnished, like, when I became pastor, we furnished, and even before that, when I was dean of students, we furnished our home from St. Vincent de Paul op shops. We clothed ourselves from there. We bought our electrical appliances from there. Like, the op shop was our go-to zone. We had nothing, and we were working our butts off. We were working hard. We were very altruistic, and but God Himself was watching that also.
100%.
Yeah, that whole "you've been faithful with a few things, I'm going to put you in charge of many things" paradigm. What a good and faithful servant, and what a lot of people. And I want to say this to the young, but I'll say this to the adults as well. But let me say this to the younger ones who are listening: being faithfully stewarding whatever it is that God's put in your hand, and when I say faithfully stewarding it, doing the things that nobody else even sees. God sees, no one else sees. He goes, okay, because He builds our character and our capacity in that type of activity. He goes, okay, you're ready, your character and your capacity are ready for a little more. And that's been our repeated experience every decade. Even so, we've just completed 16 years at Crossway. And even those 16 years at Crossway, just faithfully doing what God's asked me to do, He repeatedly has opened up new environments. He says, okay, if your character and your capacity will cope with that, because for a lot of the younger ones, not just the younger ones, this is for an everyone thing.
Humans,
But if your success gets ahead of your character, you're on a hiding to nothing. You're on a hiding to nothing. And so some who can lead with their gifting, with their charisma and all that sort of stuff, and which can open doors and can create opportunities, and like the litany of destroyed successful lives is testament to that. Build your character and your capacity, and God's not short on opportunities that He can throw your way. But be thoughtful, because the stuff that even other people don't see actually matters, because God does. And then that's where you start to live a life of conviction. You live out your conviction. What sort of person do I choose to be? And that narrative with a good conscience towards God is a very important narrative. This, for me, this is the man I choose to be. And then when you've got a thought or a temptation, because to be tempted is not to sin, but when you're tempted about something, I literally would look at that and I go, that's not the sort of man I want to be. I reject that. And if I have to, I reject that in Jesus' name, because that's not the man I choose to be. I choose to be this sort of man. And God watches that. He goes, okay, I can, with that type of attitude, here are opportunities that are going to keep sending you away.
That's cool.
So good and so encouraging for all of us that are listening and watching, I think, Lockie, just to be like, it's actually the stuff that happens in the hidden place and the secret is important, and God sees it and He knows it, and there's seasons of preparation when you might want to rush to the next life stage. Don't do that. Don't rush to and acknowledge the importance of preparation.
Just chill in the minibus.
Yeah, serious. Just chill in the minibus. That's good, actually. Hey, we want to end with a couple of really quick get to know our senior pastor rapid fires that Lockie's got. So Lockie's going to start with a couple before we finish. And I've got a couple as well.
Try and keep these ones to 1 or 2 sentences.
Whoa, okay.
Keep it tight.
Very rapid.
Edie, keep it tight.
Very
no
rapid.
blithering on.
Very rapid.
Yeah.
All right, the first one, very serious. We'll start off serious. If there was a movie about your life, who would you like to play you?
Which actor or actress would you like to play you in?
Meryl Streep.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I can
Matt
see
Damon.
I can also see it.
Like a Born Identity type vibe, that sort of thing.
Right.
Or Jack Nicholson. I get told when I put on dark glasses, people go, you actually look a bit like Jack Nicholson. So if you want to go look like Jack, but no. Matt Damon's much better looking.
I think that's unfair. Matt Damon's a good choice. Jack
That's the real thing.
Nicholson's like 80.
It's
That's not fair to you.
That's not a good choice.
Next one. What is a quote you heard or something you've read? This one, wait, it just says that has made you
What's
think.
a quote or that you heard recently that's made you think?
Sorry, I understand. I thought it was meant to say think of something, but
Yes.
yes.
Bonhoeffer, when Jesus bids a man come, he bids him come and die.
Oof.
Wow.
And Bonhoeffer did. Yeah.
He did. He did.
It's a day-to-day attitude again.
He did. I heard John Tyson say recently, learn to wait on God because I don't want to create another Ishmael.
Oh.
And I thought, ooh,
Bang.
Yeah.
yeah.
Just a
God's
couple
way.
of nice knock you on your seat type quotes for whatever time
Yeah.
you're listening to this.
Mine was just going to be chill in the minibus. But yeah.
That's got potential.
Let's get it started.
Okay, couple from me. One thing that you have to do each morning to set you up well for the day.
Coffee.
Just coffee? Is there anything around that? Are you
No,
habit
oh,
stacking
yeah.
like
You drink
James
it.
Clear?
Yeah. No, definitely. There's a whole lot of habits, but my waking thought is giving my day to the Lord.
I think you better say my week doors, get a cup of coffee.
Inviting Him. That's my first thought. Then it's coffee.
Yeah.
Then I spend time with the Lord, reading.
Do you have a machine? Do you make filter coffee? We're in
Espresso
Melbourne coffee
or
slot,
Yeah.
like a push a button machine. Yeah,
we do.
Yeah.
We do. Serious
Proper.
machine.
Yeah. And for me, I am on the habit stack side of things. And so I get my, so this morning, so let's go for this, like I woke early this morning, actually woke before 5 this morning. First thing I did was listen to my Bible. Then I got up, I actually got on a rowing machine for a while and had a cup of coffee.
Yep.
Then I went for a walk. When I went for a walk, I listened to Lectio 365, and then I walked in silence. I prayed, I thought, I committed my day to the Lord. I recalibrate when I'm walking with Him, and for me, getting out in nature really helps me. Our home backs off to a nice big park.
Yep.
So
Real brief.
That's it, real brief.
This is our last one.
That's how I set up my day.
This is-
But being mobile helps. Prayer, Word of God, bit of exercise.
Enjoying
coffee.
creation.
Just because
Giving my wife a kiss on the cheek.
Nice.
just because we live in Melbourne and we've mentioned coffee, just a real fast, quick fire one. What is your go-to coffee order at a
Latte.
cafe? Latte?
Either a long black or an oat milk latte.
Yep.
And I'd promote 5 Senses coffee. I like
We
5
use that at
Senses.
home. They're
Oh,
really
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
They're delicious.
Yeah, it's good.
the Gen Z is the internet social media generation. We like to TikTok dance, Lockie and I. We're not going to do it right now.
Speak for yourself.
Really?
Well, fine. Lockie might do it after we stop recording. You guys can both see
on
it.
camera, not on camera.
We don't think we're good at dancing, but we enjoy dancing. I want you both to picture yourself at a wedding, or a party or whatever, and the dance floor starts to form.
Yep.
And a song comes on, and you can't resist going into the middle of the dance floor.
Yeah.
What is the song?
Blame it on the boogie.
The same song?
Definitely.
That's definitely that's the same
that song. Come on, boog it up.
That wasn't your
100%.
first dance song at your wedding, was it?
No. I don't think it was even out there.
Yeah, I don't think
But it
was
would have been good. Yeah, I love that one.
What's yours, Lockie?
Sunshine.
That I can't help but dance to.
Yeah.
If I'm at a wedding, the nut bush.
Oh, yeah.
That is an instant drop spoon, like fork
Totally.
and knife.
Yeah.
I
I
was
can
a
eat later. I'm
teenager
on
when
there.
that first came out.
Yeah.
I was in dance classes. We would collectively be in lines doing the nut.
Awesome. It's the only one I will stop eating dessert to enjoy
Stand
dancing
up,
for.
leave the conversation
Yep.
rudely, go
I'll say
and
sorry.
dance.
I'll talk to you later.
Sorry. Have to go. It's great.
I like the YMCA.
That's
It's fun
yeah,
to
yeah,
stand up and
yeah,
dance
yeah.
as well.
That's good
With
too.
The intro,
Yeah.
I'm just like there. I'm
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's good too.
Well, Dale and Edi, this has been so lovely.
been
Thank you
great.
so much for giving us some of your time, for
Welcome.
talking a little bit about your lives, what you've experienced, what your hopes are for Gen Z, for Crossway going forwards as well. And for those of you that are listening, may today have been like encouraging and challenging, right, Lockie? Like may today have kind of caused you to kind of look at your life and go, what's most important to me? And let's really wrestle that to the ground now, and to acknowledge that giving your life away to Jesus really is worth it. We're in a distracted world. We're in a distracted
Absolutely.
age.
And don't push it down the track. Don't waste your young years. Build now. Build your future now. And don't waste them. Use them.
Don't waste your young years. Use them. We'll see you next time on the Crossroads podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
See you then.
See ya.